the story of Lazarus and his resurrection, or bringing him back from the dead, is easily, I think, the most emotional story in the scriptures. We see Christ crying, we see people crying, we see Jesus being moved with compassion and love, that it's even expressed by bystanders how he loved Lazarus and his family. Why we are reading that on the 5th Sunday of Lent? I think this is this moment when God, through Lent, walks with us as a father with a child. That he speaks and gives him a story of life, but he's very aware that the child can be easily afraid. That child can really be scared easily. And he's very slowly preparing him for all the difficult parts of the story in order that he will be able to receive the story in full and to be courageous, to wait till end and to see the happy ending. And this is what we are doing today, because of course just after the resurrection of Lazarus is the story of the Passion of Christ. That next week it will be Christ who will be put to death. And of course it will be a cruel death. It will be death alone. It will be death condemned unjustly. It will be a death that is a death of torture, that is crucifixion. And I think Lent can be hard to all of us. And we see that God, every almost second week, is giving us a story to build us up, to give us strength. We have the Transfiguration on the 2nd Sunday of Lent. Now on the 5th, we are going through death, through suffering, from the perspective of Lazarus, and we see that Christ is stronger than death and suffering, that he is able to bring him back from the dead. That in those 3 days, when we will be praying through Friday, Saturday and Sunday, that we will not lose faith, because Christ will be dead in the tomb. And we are called to remind ourselves what happened week before, that Lazarus was alive. This is this preparation for the Passion of Christ. This is also in many ways preparation for all of us in our lives, to see that the suffering, that death, that difficulties, that fear is in some way part of our own lives. And God knows that. And God doesn't leave us alone. But he works in a mysterious way in order to keep us with him. To teach us, even amid suffering and death, that his love and his life is greater, stronger, that death is not the last word, that really we all expect and await for the resurrection, that we all will receive this gift, that the destiny of humankind is not death, but life. And of course at the end of Lent is the passion and resurrection of Christ. And that what we are called to always remember, that this is what we are waiting for. This is what we are preparing to celebrate. That this mystery of God's resurrection, of Jesus' resurrection, is really not something that is outside of us, just a mere fact, a history, that we can acknowledge or not, that the tomb is empty. It is much more. Because in his resurrection is our own resurrection, as we see in the second reading. That indeed, in the resurrection of Lazarus even, is our own resurrection. And resurrection that is beyond the resurrection of Lazarus. Lazarus was brought up from the dead, and then he died again. But our resurrection will be to life infinitely better than this one. Life with Christ, life with God in heaven. So let us indeed recognize today and remember the great compassion and love of Christ, that what we are celebrating next week will be the celebration of this compassion and love when he will give his life for us, in order that in 2 weeks' time he will be brought back from the dead, that he will come to us not only with compassion and love, but also with redemption and life.